And these numbers were released, though. Here's the problem. The numbers were released by the Players Union. So it makes me wonder, is the WNBA ownership, the NBA ownership, Adam Silver, actually going to release all the entire figures? But they made enough money to finally, for the first time ever, trigger an actual revenue share for the players. And
that hesitation right there tells you everything. The WNBA finally turned a profit in 2025. For the first time in the league's 29-year history, they made enough money to trigger revenue sharing with the players. But watch his reaction carefully, because the numbers that just dropped reveal something the league absolutely did not want public. The Players Union released the figures themselves, not the WNBA, not Adam Silver, not the ownership group. The union had to be the ones to announce that players are finally getting their cut, which immediately raises the question, what exactly are they trying to hide?
Share, it's my understanding, after expenses get paid. So it's like a net revenue share. And the players finally got it. The players finally got it, again, under the current CBA. For the first time in history, the WNBA generated enough income in 2025 to trigger revenue sharing with its players, union leadership told ESPN on Sunday. I still don't understand how this is a public relations win for the players, because the players have been telling us they're broke.
Here's what we know for certain. Under the 2020 collective bargaining agreement, players receive 50% of shared revenue, but only after the league crosses a predetermined threshold and subtracts 30% for expenses. That threshold was based on 2019 revenue numbers, compounded by 20% across subsequent years. The COVID-19 pandemic crushed revenue in 2020 and 2021, making those targets seem completely unreachable. Until 2025, the Caitlin Clark effect changed everything. The union announced that players will split $16 million total. $8 million goes directly to players who were active in 2025. The other $8 million gets allocated to marketing agreements, which are off-season promotional initiatives offered to select players. But here's the critical detail they're not emphasizing. That $16 million represents the players' 50% share, which means the total shared revenue was $32 million after expenses.
My guess would be at least probably $20 million to have triggered this. Union leaders said the league notified player leadership earlier this month that they hit the benchmark. 13 teams will receive a total of $8 million from the league to disperse amongst players, the union said. The Women's National Basketball Players Association declined to provide bank statements. The amount of revenue generated by the league or the number required to trigger the revenue sharing.
Now let's talk about what shared revenue actually means, because this is where it gets complicated. This isn't total league revenue. This is revenue above the predetermined threshold, minus 30% for operational expenses. The union and league have repeatedly refused to specify what that threshold number is. Think about that structure for a moment. If the shared revenue pool was $32 million after subtracting 30% for expenses, that means the revenue above the threshold was roughly $45 to $46 million before expenses. But we still don't know what the threshold itself was set at. The league could have generated $200 million in total revenue, hit a threshold of $150 million, created $46 million in profit above that line, and we'd be looking at these exact same revenue-sharing numbers.
The announcement by the union comes amid contentious negotiations between the league and the players for a new CBA. Revenue sharing and salary continue to be sticking points. Okay, let's put this out there first. Let us also understand that if they did turn a profit, this was the first time in history, ever. And if you think that doesn't make these owners nervous, that this was like a one-time hit, that this is not going to have legs, that this is not going to keep going, and I'm sure they're a little worried about the fact that, Caitlin Clark got hurt. They've only got one player that's driving on.
And that's not even counting the licensing revenue. The Players Union separately announced they're distributing $9.25 million from licensing deals covering 2020 jersey sales, trading cards, video games, merchandise with that WNBA logo, More than 250 players will receive payments, including retired players, with a maximum of $50,000 for players who were active all 6 seasons. Compare that to the previous licensing period from 2016 to 2019, when players received a maximum of $1,600 each. The jump from $1,600 to $50,000 tells you exactly how much the merchandising explosion around Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese changed the financial landscape. But here's what makes this particularly interesting. The union reported that licensing revenue alone topped $10 million in 2025. That's separate from the league's revenue sharing calculation, so players are getting money from 2 different pots, and the league's ownership group doesn't want to reveal the full picture of either one.
The union has 30 days to present its proposed payment structure to the league. The union leaders said they expect to submit their proposal in the next 2 weeks. The league's payment is due 60 days after it issued its report to the union, according to the CBA. Union leaders also said on Sunday they will be divvying up $9.25 million to players from licensing revenue generated since 2020. Oh, since 2020. Jersey sales, trading cards, video games, and other merch. The union expects to share that money by June 1st. Quote, I'm just hopeful that this distribution gives a little bit of comfort and a lot of...
This is where the ownership nervousness becomes obvious. 29 years. That's how long it took to turn a profit. And now they've finally crossed that line in a season completely dominated by one player's drawing power. Caitlin Clark suffered a knee injury in early May 2025 that sidelined her for multiple games. The moment she went down, you could feel the panic ripple through the league offices, because everyone understands the reality here. This isn't sustainable organic growth. This is a Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Ratings spike when she plays. Merchandise flies off shelves with her name on it. Arenas sell out when the Fever come to town. Take her out of the equation, and what do these numbers look like? The owners invested hundreds of millions of dollars over nearly 3 decades, absorbing losses year after year, subsidized by NBA revenue sharing. And in the one season they finally see a return, it's entirely dependent on a single player staying healthy and maintaining her popularity.
In licensing revenue to players who played during 2016 to 2019 with a maximum of $1,600 per player. So are they saying $9.25 million in 2020 to 2025? So it wasn't just, maybe it was last year. Nah, I don't know. See, that's hazy. The union began pursuing group licensing in 2018 at the direction of outgoing player leadership. According to the union, the WNBA generated over $2.5 million in revenue from group licenses in 2024, and revenue topped $10 million in 2025.
Now let's address the elephant in the room, the CBA negotiations happening right now. The current agreement expires after the 2027 season, but both sides started negotiating early because of how dramatically the financial landscape shifted in 2025. Revenue sharing and salary structures are the major sticking points. The players' union clearly released these numbers as leverage. They're showing their membership and the public that the league is profitable, that the money exists, that the old arguments about financial sustainability don't hold up anymore. WNBA Executive Director Terry Jackson told ESPN, I'm just hopeful that this distribution gives a little bit of comfort and a lot of confidence in what we're doing. Translation, we're proving the league makes money, so pay us accordingly. But the ownership group is looking at this completely differently. They're seeing one profitable year after 28 years of losses. They're seeing expansion fees from the Golden State Valkyries and Toronto franchises that they specifically don't want counted as league revenue in the new CBA calculations. They're seeing a profit margin that's likely somewhere between $20 and $50 million, which sounds impressive until you remember that NBA teams routinely generate profits in the hundreds of millions.
I think they turned a profit. If I'm understanding all of this, and it's always been my understanding that the league would have had to have turned a profit. At what level, we don't know, but would have had to turn a profit in order for these revenue sharing bonuses to finally trigger. Looks like they finally triggered. And I would very much assume, because they're not wanting to put it rightfully so, not wanting to put expansion fees in the league's income for the new CBA that they're negotiating. So I doubt it would have had to have been outside of the expansion fees, whatever's whatever income came in that did not include that. Huh. Interesting. That is interesting. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, and I'm already seeing it, see, we told you they were making money. 1 damn year. 1 year is what we're talking about here. 1 year. And I'm going to be interested to see the owner's response to this. Are they going to release the figures? And if they did turn a profit, how pathetic is it going to end up being? All right? Because, I mean, what's to owners that have put all this money into owning franchises, what do you hope your return's going to be? Right? If you own a team, I would assume you'd want to make at least what, $10 million profit off that team, I would think. Something that makes it worth your investment and worth your time. And the headache, good God, the headache. Tell me what you think. Peace, I'm out.
Here's what makes this entire situation so precarious. The WNBA added the Golden State Valkyries for 2025 with a reported expansion fee of $50 million. Toronto is coming in 2026 with a reported fee of $75 million. Portland is expected to join in 2027 or 2028 with a similar fee structure. That's $200 million in expansion fees over 3 years. But expansion fees don't count as league revenue under the current CBA structure. They're one-time payments distributed among existing owners, separate from the operational revenue that triggers player revenue sharing. The union wants that to change. The owners absolutely do not, because here's the reality. Without counting expansion fees, the league generated enough profit in 2025 to give players $16 million in revenue sharing. With expansion fees included, that number could have been $40 to $50 million or more. The difference is enormous. And this is where the Caitlin Clark dependency becomes a massive problem for ownership. Let's say the league agrees to a new CBA that significantly increases the revenue sharing percentage and includes expansion fees in the calculation. Then Caitlin Clark retires early, or suffers a career-altering injury, or simply loses her mainstream appeal. Suddenly the ratings drop, merchandise sales decline, and the league is locked into a salary structure they can't afford without that singular star power driving revenue. The owners watched the WNBA lose money for 28 consecutive years. They're not about to commit to a dramatically more expensive CBA based on one profitable season that was entirely dependent on unprecedented mainstream attention around a single rookie. Think about the timeline here. The 2020 CBA set revenue targets based on 2019 numbers, compounded by 20% annually. The pandemic destroyed those projections for 2020 and 2021. The league slowly recovered in 2022 and 2023. Then Caitlin Clark gets drafted in 2024, and suddenly everything explodes in 2025. That's not a trend, that's an anomaly. And the ownership group knows it. That's why they're not rushing to release detailed financial statements. That's why they declined to comment when ESPN asked about the revenue-sharing payments. That's why they're being extremely cautious in CBA negotiations, despite the players' union pointing to profitability as proof that money exists. The union's strategy is smart from a negotiating standpoint. Release the numbers publicly, show the membership that revenue sharing finally happened, build momentum for a better deal. But the ownership strategy is equally calculated. Acknowledge the profitability without revealing the full scope, emphasize the one-year sample size, and maintain leverage by keeping the complete financial picture private. Here's what's particularly interesting about the timing. The union announced these payments in May 2025, right in the middle of CBA negotiations. That's not coincidental. They're trying to shift public perception and put pressure on ownership to agree to more favorable terms. The fact that players are receiving revenue sharing for the first time ever becomes a talking point. See, the league makes money now, so we deserve better contracts. But ownership can counter with, we made money for 1 year after 28 years of losses, largely because of one player's unprecedented mainstream appeal, and you want us to commit to a dramatically more expensive salary structure based on that? Both arguments have merit. The question is, which side has more leverage? The players have public sentiment on their side. Fans see the packed arenas, the record television ratings, the sold-out merchandise. The narrative that WNBA players are underpaid compared to the revenue they generate has gained significant traction, especially after Caitlin Clark's $40,000 rookie salary became a national talking point, while the league was generating record revenue. But the owners have the financial reality on their side. One profitable year doesn't erase 28 years of losses. The total amount invested in keeping the WNBA operational over nearly 3 decades runs into the billions when you account for NBA subsidies, individual owner investments, and accumulated losses. A $20 to $50 million profit in 2025 doesn't come close to making the league a good investment from a pure return on investment standpoint. So where does this leave us? The union has successfully proven that the league can be profitable. The $16 million revenue sharing payment, combined with the $9.25 million in licensing revenue, shows players that the money exists. That's a powerful negotiating tool. But the owners have successfully maintained control over the complete financial narrative by refusing to release detailed revenue figures. We don't know the total revenue. We don't know the exact profit margin. We don't know what the predetermined threshold was that triggered revenue sharing. Without that information, it's impossible to evaluate whether the league's profitability is sustainable or whether 2025 was a one-time spike driven by unprecedented circumstances. And that's exactly how ownership wants it. Because the moment they release complete financial statements showing substantial profitability, they lose leverage in CBA negotiations. The union can point to those numbers and demand significantly higher salaries and revenue-sharing percentages. But as long as the financial details remain private, ownership can acknowledge profitability while simultaneously arguing that it's not substantial enough or sustainable enough to justify the union's demands. The next CBA is going to define the WNBA's financial future for at least the next 5 to 7 years. If the players get what they want, including higher revenue sharing percentages and expansion fees counted as league revenue, salaries could double or triple. If ownership maintains control and keeps the structure relatively similar to the current CBA, players will continue arguing they're underpaid relative to the revenue they generate. What's your take? Does one profitable year after 28 years of losses justify a dramatically more expensive CBA? Or should ownership maintain conservative salary structures until they prove this profitability has legs beyond the Caitlin Clark phenomenon? Because that's the real question here. Is this sustainable growth, or did the league just get lucky that the most marketable college basketball player in a generation happened to choose the WNBA in 2024? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more deep dives into WNBA business decisions and league dynamics, hit that subscribe button